All right, and welcome everyone to the Ginette Biro Podcast. I'm Ginette Biro, and thank you always so much for joining me on the show where we dive into messages from Spirit. And we have a really interesting one today, and it kind of came to me by surprise. Actually, it was kind of just like this pop of a voice in my head that was like, "Talk about this." And so when I asked again the three guys that like to expand, the idea was expanding inward. And I paused for a second because, again, sort of with what they were saying in the January 2022 update, was look less outside of you and look more inside of you, because inside is where you can really make the difference. And then that is reflected outward. So this same idea goes for their message today, which is really like looking inside. And what they wanted to start with was the idea of us really nurturing our emotional wounds. And so what I mean by that is not that everybody is wounded, because there's a lot of people that have done a lot of hard, deep work to move through their wounding of different types, childhood traumas, relationship traumas, event traumas, situations, whatever it may be, all of the things. We have all done a lot of work, but what they're saying is nurture your emotional wounds since 2020. The wounds specifically to do with what we've experienced in the last 2 years, because there's wounding there. Whether it be wounding from, the mixed messaging that is out there, which makes it really hard for us to follow a path. And as humans, we like to follow a truth. And when the truth is being scattered everywhere, we have a hard time following it, regardless of what your source is. There's no judgment on the source, but when there are polarities that are pulling at each other and angry at each other and fighting at each other, and people are kind of being forced to almost choose a side, because you're judged if you choose one side, you're judged if you choose the other, and you're judged if you stand in the middle and take the middle road like Buddha, right? Like it's such a polarizing time. And so what they were saying is that within these last 2 years, we have all in some form experienced emotional wounds, but they're saying in order for these last 2 years not to hold us back, we also need to nurture those emotions. And so for some, it may truly be wounding. There may be loss of people. There may be, loss of friendships even. There's a lot of ways that it can be shown, but it can also be loss of hopes or loss of business, loss of peace of mind, loss of a sense of self on this planet, right? Everything has been changed. You talk to anybody and most people are like, I've never lived through something like this. This is such a strange world. This is such a strange way to be. And they're very accurate. And so that leaves an imprint on our emotional selves. So that's why Spirit is saying, take time to nurture those emotional wounds. Take that time for you, discover what it is. And if it's not a deep wound, maybe it's just an emotion you need to sit with and become aware of and just notice it. What is it telling you? What can you learn about it? What do you not like about it? What can you release or what can you embrace? Maybe for you experienced an emotional response to something that maybe you've never had before, but it taught you to step up. And so in your case, you might look at that and be grateful for it. That is equally as okay. So for some, it might not be wounding per se, but it's like review the emotions that you have moved through. Don't discount them. Don't spiritually bypass them. And don't distract from them too. We have had a lot of distractions available to us, whether it be Netflix, alcohol, drugs, escapism of all sorts, some better than others. And I'm not saying that sometimes, escaping for a little while is bad. It's not. Sometimes it gives our nervous system some time to reset. But when that escapism is taking us out of the truth of our reality, then we're having an issue. So coming back to the emotions and what those helped you feel is really, really important. And they said, once you take some time kind of swimming in those emotions, then they said, really try and step into lightheartedness. Allow that inner child within you come out and play. Because remember, we've been saying over and over that play, joy, laughter are some of the highest vibrations that you can move through your body. Some of the absolute highest vibrations you can move through your body. And so when we allow ourselves those opportunities for that, then we can increase the frequencies. of our bodies. And that's so important for us to help ascend, for us to have clarity of mind, and for us to really be able to embrace different ways of thinking, maybe change patterns, ascend, shift, all of those things really help when we are in a lighthearted energy. And lightheartedness comes from, again, play, inner child, all that kind of stuff. So that's really important and a really valuable lesson for us to embrace, because it helps us be in control when we're not running away from the emotions that we have felt or experienced, when we're willing to look back at them, take them for what they are, embrace them, learn all of that. And then also choose to fill our cup with lightheartedness and play. We really are sitting in the driver's seat. And again, with this whole year being embodiment, that is what Spirit really wants us to do, is embody the truth of who we are, sit in that driver's seat and move forward. And so the other thing they wanted to talk about too was the idea of false assumptions. Now, we've been sitting in this energy the last little while of, observing the world around us, choosing what we think, choosing what we know to be true for us. But at the same time, that also leads to us sometimes creating false assumptions about others, other stories, reasonings for things. We don't always know the full picture. We can't know the full picture of another unless we are in their shoes completely. And that's impossible. Now, that doesn't mean we disregard our intuition about something, but it's like always leave a little bit open for the potential of a false assumption, because sometimes we can put out a judgment, a thought, an opinion, and be so rigid to it. We can fail to recognize a potential for growth, a potential to learn something really significant. And if we put that rigidity in there, then we are blocking ourselves. Just as much as sometimes when we do that, we miss a huge opportunity, even for humbling or recalibrating, by recognizing maybe we had a false assumption about something or someone. So there's a lot of false assumptions moving around in the murkiness, and maybe even somebody has falsely assumed something about you. And maybe that even caused some emotional wounding. But regardless, come back to self, tend to your emotional wounds, your emotional feelings, come back to lightheartedness, and leave an open mind that you don't know everything. I think the time in which we start to assume that we know everything, we hold this full power, that we know all the details, that really feeds into ego. And yes, we are absolutely sentient beings. We are all knowing in spirit, but we are also very much in a human form with a human mind and a human ego. And anytime we start to get carried away with assuming we know all the things and how things are, and stay ridiculously rigid to our one-sided opinion without embracing somebody else's reality for their own reality, we then start to block our own progress and growth. Because somebody else's reality is as valid to them as is yours. And this is one of the cool things that Spirit showed me, was that we all basically live in a, is it a tetrahedron or a hexagon? I can't remember. But anyways, we each have our own reality, which is our own matrix in a sense. And so my reality is 100% true for me, as much as your reality is 100% true for you. Now, our realities may be vastly similar, but they're not exactly the same, but they are very true for each of us. Just as if our realities were completely different, they're both inherently true, because if you believe your reality is true, then it is true to you. And that is your reality based on your perspective, based on your soul's journey, and based on your alignment. So again, that's why taking out this idea of assuming something, assuming you know all without any opportunity for it to slightly open. And I'm talking about in the form of a judgment, right? Judgment, an assumption, may in fact prevent your growth. So consider that, consider where it's coming up. And for some of you, it may not be coming up. And for some of you, you may be listening to this and feeling like you are very open-minded, but you're feeling false judgments, false assumptions being placed on you. And if that's the case, remember, it's coming from somebody else's perspective and reality. And at this point, they are standing in their truth of it. And really, it has nothing to do with you because your reality is the one that matters. So take that, come back to your emotional self, mend what needs to be mended, make time for what needs time to heal, and come back to that inner child and play. If you did nothing else in 2022 but discover different ways that you love to play, you would be giving yourself the greatest bounty, the greatest gift. If we did nothing else in 2022 but learn how to play again, after the hard couple of years that we've had to move through, we would be recalibrating at a speed that is unparalleled. We would be ascending at a speed that is unparalleled. And when we use that childlike play of lightheartedness to balance out the times when we feel deep and dark in our despair, we would really be using those scales of balance to their fullest potential. And that's an amazing strength, an amazing gift, and also an amazing vulnerability. Man, I'm having a hard time talking today. Oh, vulnerability. You know, those times when we are so down in the dumps and it feels like nothing would ever pull us out of it. And we almost kind of self-righteously stick ourselves there or hold ourselves there. It's in those moments when you have enough vulnerability within self to throw up your hands and say, I surrender even to myself, even to my pity party. And it may be very merited. You may have every reason for having a pity party, but still, if in that moment at some point you can say, okay, now what can I do to balance this out with those scales of balance? What can I choose to do to help my energy? When you have the power of that, you become that divine warrior within self. 100%. That's a hard thing to do. And again, it's not about spiritually bypassing and just choosing false positivity, but rather it's embracing the emotions you have, but then choosing when you are ready to move forward or try to attempt stuff to balance it out. Again, these scales of balance are so important. Spirit shows them to me all the time of balancing all kinds of things. But in this case, we're talking about emotional work, heavy-heartedness that we've moved through and will continue to move through. We're not magically out of this pandemic yet. We're not magically out of the massive shifts happening on the planet, but we have tools, and these tools allow us the ability to move through these things. And one of the greatest tools is choice. Choice allows us to pick which tool we want from our tool chest and use it as we please, but we have to remember we can do that. So I will leave that with you guys for now. And I'm going to go have another cup of coffee. So maybe I can speak a little more fluidly. But I hope that helps inspire you guys for, kind of maneuvering this year with a higher frequency, maneuvering this year with your willingness to be vulnerable with self, retreat and nurture yourself with goodness of all kinds, books, baths, Netflix, a drink if that's how you do it sometimes, again, not to excess and escapism, but the things that you do, maybe it's dance, for me it's dance, do that, but balance it too also with lightheartedness and joy and laughter and play. Get yourself up and out there, get yourself out in nature, get yourself surrounded by people, even if it's a phone call, and have some laughs. Make fun of the vulnerability in some form because it keeps it lighthearted, and that's really important. And it's very true. They're reminding me when we can laugh at ourselves too, even in some of the darkest stages, when we can find humor in it, there's a magic to that. And it's not about making fun of, but it's almost like this surrender in the humor. So when you can find that, you really are shifting your frequency. So again, I will leave it there. I hope that inspires you guys. And for anything else, do check out avalonspirit.com. If you're really looking to expand your consciousness this year and dive into different aspects of self, avalonspirit.com has so many ways that you can do that. From the different personal journey guides that we have, from Akashic record readings, astrology, birth charts, shamanic healing, past life regressions, crystal light therapy healing, mediumship readings, intuitive self readings. There's so much there if you're looking for resources, and they're all vetted by me. I trust them all absolutely. So those are some avenues for you. And also listening to the podcast and messages of mine and all different other light workers out there that have stuff to share. Like, you're doing your work by doing that, by being open-minded and listening. So keep doing that. And yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. So I wish you all a beautiful, wonderful rest of your week. And I will be back again with an extra coffee in hand so that I can speak with more clarity, but I'm winging it and I'm giving you guys me the way I am without judgment either. So have a great rest of your day, everyone.